I'm going to be talking to you today about the most important thing about photography, and that is composition. I also just want to say something today which is super important. It is Mother's Day. Well, happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers. But also, I would like to just think about and also send my absolute honest love to the people today who were supposed to be mothers and then had that privilege, that love, that joy taken away from them in some way, shape or form. It is shit, and just thinking of you today. If you can't get a good composition on your photographs will always look a bit naff. Now, I've seen loads of photographs recently all over the internet, including on Facebook and on blogs and even on stock sites that just do not have good composition. So what I'm going to talk to you about today basically is the absolute fundamental rules of composition when it comes to photographing pets and people, portraits, action, that kind of thing. Some of them you know. The main point to note really is that these are rules, and rules are, in my opinion, always meant to be broken, but you're only allowed to break rules if you know how to use them and how to follow them. So let's start with the basics, because the main rule that everybody should know and should be following is the rule of thirds. Now, rules are meant to be broken, as I have mentioned, but the rule of thirds essentially works like this. So you've got a picture and you divide your image / camera / screen into a beautiful grid where you've got equal thirds. That's vertical thirds and horizontal thirds, which leaves you with 9 squares, although usually they're rectangles unless you're shooting in a square crop, which is rare. In this kind of a situation, when you've got these squares, you end up with 4 intersecting points. Now, these points essentially are what you want to put your subject on. If you do that, and that's all you do, your photographs will already have a lift. However, kind of rule 2 when it comes to using the rule of thirds is that you should always use your space 2/3, because if you think about it, your subject is on one of those third lines, so you've got 2 gaps basically where there's nothing. You want to leave the space to the side that the subject is either looking into or moving into. Take it like this, for example. I'm kind of at one side of this screen, aren't I? Really? I'm at this side of the screen. If I was to look this way, the general, apart from my awful skin at the moment, the general composition of that shot, distracting background removed, the general composition of this shot is okay. Like, I'm looking into the space and therefore the space looks good. If, contrastingly, I was to look to the other side, like this, you end up, your brain just can't work it out. It's like, well, hang on a minute, she's looking this way. Why do I not have space here and actually have all of the space here? This makes no sense. So sometimes you've got a situation where your subject is facing this way, but looking that way. That's where you're going to have a trouble, because you don't know where to go. As a general rule, you want to be leaving the space to the side that your subject is looking into and also moving into, theoretically. When do you break that rule? When do you break the rule of thirds? Usually you would break the rule of thirds if you have got a powerful center shot, of which I will add one here, or when you're using leading lines. So when you're using leading lines, that's different. Now, I don't really shoot with leading lines, but I'll try and include an example of one of my pictures that uses them here. So what this aims to achieve basically is you use lines that are in the environment to point at your subject. So you basically use those lines to form it. They don't have to be straight lines. They could be curved lines, they could be a path, they could be a tree, branch, doing something. It doesn't really matter. The point is use lines to point at something. That's the only time when really you would want to be breaking rule of thirds most of the time, because usually that is a very strong image if it goes to the center, theoretically. The next composition rule, which I personally use a lot because my work is mainly quite commercial, so it's about the subject rather than everything else that's going on. So I don't really have any nice backgrounds to highlight in my beautiful photographs. So I focus on the subject instead, and the crops that I would use for that basically leave equal space above and below the subject. If you're doing quite like a portrait situation, it's very different if you're further away. And then you would want probably to put your subject in the bottom third, looking with space like looking above. That's your ideal in that situation. And we're going to be including examples of these because this is very hard to explain without visual aids, and my visual aids are always useful. The next super trick, and when it comes to composition, my unbroken rule, I believe it's unbroken, and something that I always taught my students back in the past, is body part crops. So with body part crops, basically what we mean by a body part crop is if you've taken a shot, we do not have the luxury as pet and animal photographers to keep full control of our individual subject at all times. So sometimes you may, usually in an action shot, have your dog flying at the camera at speed, and you might accidentally crop off part of the paw, for example. If you crop off a toenail, like a little toenail, or a toe, and even to a certain extent half of a foot, you're going to want to go ahead and chop that in halfway up the leg. And there is a reason for this. Again, psychological. Our brains put together images, and we like images where our brains can make sense of them. If we chop a toe off, we're wondering what happened to the toe. Whereas if we cut off, and this is the trick, slightly above a joint, your brain is fine with it, weirdly. I'm going to show you something to illustrate this. So we're going to chop off a toe, and it doesn't make sense. And then we're going to chop off above a major joint. And this is the thing, a major joint. You could say to me, well, there are joints in the toes. Irrelevant. You want to be chopping off slightly past a major joint. So we're going to be going like here or here. Don't do the shoulder, theoretically. Your scapula is important to the dog here. So yeah, major joints, chop off above them. So you've taken the shot, you're too close to the toe, you've chopped the toe, you've chopped half the foot off. Just kind of lop it off somewhere above the foot, or somewhere above the knee, but above the foot works best. Always looks better. Literally, always. I'd love for someone to prove me wrong right now. Try it. Just try it. And then the final tip, really, in this quick rundown of compositional brilliance, is to leave space for the subject to breathe. Some people love to crop super close. Some people love to crop quite far away. Everybody has their own style, and that's fine. You need to not crop in so tight that it feels like the subject's being squished. But at the same time, you also don't want to crop in too wide, so it makes it feel like the subject's being lost in that particular scene or image. That's kind of important. I mean, I see somewhere it's a bit too far away, and for my personal tastes, because this is just a personal taste, if it feels like the subject is too small in the frame, that's because your composition or other things in the scene are off. So always just be careful of that. I'm not going to go into things like background analysis and angles to shoot at and all sorts of other different things, because that's in a different video and that will come. If you like what you've seen, please press the subscribe button and click on the bell icon. The bell icon will help because that will give you notifications every single time I upload a video. Also, it just helps me out. If you like my videos and let me know that you like my videos, I will make more videos for you. It's a hobby. I am trying to help people. But if nobody thinks that it's helpful, I'm gonna not be making the videos much longer. That's it for today. Super short, super sweet. And I'm gonna take my pineapple and go and chill and try and not get the coronavirus. If you're in a country that is struggling with coronavirus at the moment, which basically is the whole world, I mean, I can't do much to help you in the actual situation, but I'm going to try and help you improve your photography. So try and stick with me. And if you are super sick, please get well soon. Make sure you look after people who may not be able to be looked after, i.e. the elderly or the isolated or the vulnerable.